Thank you, Damien. Right, let's. I'm just aware of time, so rather than me reading out all the bios, I think what I'll do, let me see, because we've got a great panel here today. So let me just introduce you. If you just walk up as and when I say your names, please. So we've got Anna Hickey, COO of Wavemaker, a new agency in the UK, which we're going to be finding a lot more about. Hi, Anna. Thank you for joining us. Ian Jacob, the outgoing CEO of EMEA for Publicis Media. Thank you, Ian. Ali McCallum, CEO of M6. And David Indo, the CEO of ID Comms. Thank you, David. So just before we get started, background. So before I joined Bloomberg, I spent my formative years, so good sort of 10 years or more, reporting and commentating on the media business. And during that time, I saw that the UK shops go from these sort of single agencies run by larger than life characters, usually with their names above the door, to these altogether more sophisticated corporate global networks. And I think they've been the driving force for these marketing groups for much of the past 10 to 15 years, actually, in terms of revenues. But something's happened over the past few years where the evolution is at a very challenging inflection point. I think we can all agree. We've got a slide, actually. I'm looking at Belinda. Do we have the slide? Oh, the slide's gone. Anyway, the slide was just telling us, just reaffirming some of the disruption which we've been talking about over the past 18 months and about what's happening. And actually, considering media agencies have been, for the large part, the growth engine of many of the marketing holding companies, just a look at 2017's group revenue figures of the big 4 or 5 tells its own story. Publicis Group, 2017 revenues down 3.1%. Omnicom Group down 5.2%. WPP's like-for-like revenues were down 0.9%. Not a pretty year, said outgoing Martin Sorrell. In fact, it was the worst year for WPP since 2009, that recession-addled 2009. So, well, obviously, there's something going on there. And that. I just wanted to do that as a context for our discussion. So, what's the current situation and where are we? Maybe I would love to start with you, Anna. You're now COO of this new Wavemaker agency, which, you know, I know MEC and I knew Maxus. So I don't know, what's Wavemaker and how is it different?
It feels slightly odd sitting in front of a big screen that talks about, can you trust your media agency? I'm sure it's a slightly strange photograph that might hit the press tomorrow. So so we launched in January. We came about from the merger of MEC and Maxus, but were very clear from the start that this was the launch of an entirely new agency. And the singular focus in terms of structuring that agency and our proposition was around how we become the most future-ready agency in the market and globally. And I think that's driven by a couple of things that are going on in the marketplace. And one of the most important ones driving that need for transformation is commoditization. So I think for too long, the media agency world has been obsessed with trying to justify tiny points of differentiation in their offerings that actually are quite meaningless to clients. And so the commoditization is a reality, and it's driving down the value of what we do and the value of the business proposition that we're taking forward. And so with Wavemaker, what we have tried to do is to create a business model that is entirely focused on what that future model needs to look like. So there's a couple of things that underpin that. So firstly, we're not a business that is built around a single service of media transaction. We're a business that's built on 9 products, which we believe ultimately are the way to build value for clients. And client growth is our singular focus, and it's what we always talk about our being, therefore. And we focus on purchase journeys. So everything that we've done, our model, how we structured the business, all of the products that we've built around the business are entirely built through the lens of purchase journeys, with the objective being that we are there to move customers to action as quickly, as effectively and as efficiently as possible. And that simplicity, that singular obsession is really important, because as well as commoditization in the marketplace and the value of media being driven down all the time, the other thing that's massively affecting clients and CMOs in particular is the complexity they're dealing with. So the difficulty with which they have to make decisions in this incredibly agile, moving, complex landscape. So actually having a singular focus on one thing, which is moving customers to action, is really helpful.
So you've got the commoditization of the buying side of the business. Group M is still servicing that part for you. So you're focusing on the customer journey side, and you've got your funnel, or what do you call it? Your
wheel.
Your wheel, yeah. Okay, which was adopted via MEC. Right. Okay. So I do get it, but I guess I struggle to see what the difference is between that and MEC and Maxis's offer.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the key difference is in the fact that we are a business made up of specialisms. So, in the past, you would have been an agency that would have had media planners and buyers, and hopefully a few clever strategic people around the fringes. But the core of the conversation that you had with clients was about media planning and buying. Now, that's a very small part of one or two of the 9 products that we hero. Actually, everything else is about technology and content and e-commerce and precision marketing and audience sciences and analytics. So actually, the conversation that we're having is very different, and that's because...
So it's a broader conversation in the marketing services arena.
Absolutely right.
Okay, great. Thank you, Anna. And now, if we go to Ian, I'll work down the line. I'll segue you all in somehow. So, Ian, Publicis Group, okay, you moved a few years ago towards this idea of having a marketing services sort of wider group, which then has its individual brands. I mean, how did it work out? I know you're in the process of leaving Publicis Group, so you can be really honest with us.
It worked out very well. Worked out very well, thank you. No, I want to just draw some of the perspectives that you started with and touch on a couple of Anna's points. There is an inflection point. There is radical change, and my belief is that we're just seeing the early stages of that. Really, we're just seeing the early stages of it, and I see it in every signal that the market is sending. I'm enormously optimistic, actually, about the kind of the media role within that change, and I'll talk about that in a little while. But fundamentally, if you think about some of the bigger trends that have happened, we've all been brought up for the last 10 years on handling fragmentation. All the pitch briefs always used to say, it's a fragmented world, how do I get my audience studied? The sort of thing. And that's changing. That's changing. There is a radical consolidation of power happening as we speak. And you see it in the major digital world with the major platforms. You see it with, obviously, the Googles. You see it in e-commerce with Amazon and the technologies. You see it with people like even Ocado who are spreading their technology around the world. This is leading to a consolidation, and it's a very different world. And you have to reframe how you operate in that world. And if you're an agency in that world, you have to think about, well, what is my value? What value am I bringing to that? Because if, 2 or 3 digital platforms are taking 80% of the total revenue, and I'm a client, why don't I just go straight to the platform? Honestly?
Really, really interesting and a great point. So, yeah, we had years of fragmentation in the media landscape where, having started from, IT in the UK, you had your main TV channels and then, your newspapers and your magazines.
And we've siloed the business a little bit, Arif.
Yeah.
Because we've gone, there's media, there's creative, there's something. And it's been the driver of the revenue for all the holding companies, for sure. Because you go, you need e-com expertise. I'll build an e-com practice, more revenue. Perfect. That model is super stretched now. Because actually, I think what clients are doing is going, rather than saying, tell me about all your capabilities, they're actually going, here's my business problem. I'm in a low growth market. I'm in a low growth market. I've got terrible competition coming around. I can't sell as much products in Asia as I used to, so that's putting more pressure on Europe. Give me the solution to my business challenge, rather than just saying, line me up another capability. And how are you going to bring those capabilities together is absolutely the heart of it.
So that's a significant shift in perception in terms of how you're running that business, and which leads us nicely into Ali McCallum, so who's now M6 is a new type of business, isn't it? You've got the creative, you've got the media and digital next to each other. Maybe tell us a little bit about M6 first, because you're not a networked agency.
Yeah. Well, we are. I mean, M6 is part of the AM partnership, which is a collection of agencies, including creative, media, CRM, PR. M6 is 51% owned by the AM partnership, and Group M have a minority stake. So, in that sense, we offer a best of both worlds solution for our clients. I guess the themes that are coming through here is that I think to thrive in the future, agencies have got to have a clearly differentiated proposition that allows clients to understand how that proposition can answer their challenges. Now, you also have to be, and we talked about this earlier, you have to be brave enough to understand you can't be all things to all clients. So, you have to understand what you're not going to be great at, as well as what you are going to be very good at. What we have landed on is that what some clients want going forward is much closer integration between the data that they have, the media planning and buying, and the creative messaging, and actually all customer touch points. And so what we have been doing over the last 3 to 4 years is embedding teams into our clients' business, where we put media alongside creative and data and analytics. And what we're seeing is that's actually helping clients to understand the value of their data and how they can start to surface it through upstream through to creative messaging, as opposed to being something that's just fueling a programmatic buy. It's putting us right next to the clients.
Just tell us the kind of clients you have. Just remind
Toyota. So we have a team of around 30 to 40 people down at Toyota. Mm-hmm. Lexus. We have 70 people down at News UK, working in an embedded model. We have that in 17 markets across Europe for Toyota. What we're finding, though, coming back to this trust issue, which is something that has been a challenge for the last 2 to 3 years, I think, and possibly even before that. I mean, I'm not sure clients ever really trusted their agencies fully. I just think it's become more pronounced with stories that have emerged over the last few years. What we're finding, though, is once you sit alongside your client and work with them day to day, it removes that friction. It removes some.
And you actually mean physically sit with them. You're moving people into their office.
So with their people.
I mean, that's quite one extreme way of working closely.
So it solves their. I mean, there are a lot of clients who want to have more control over their media and marketing spends. They want to be closer to the machines. They want to understand. They want to get closer to their own data and the activation of that. We're solving that problem by in-sourcing. That's
interesting. I'm just curious. Do you ever have a situation where the guys who are sitting, for example, in News UK, end up working for News UK?
We've had
yes is the answer.
Both ways, actually. Both ways. So we've taken people from client business and put them into ours. What it allows us is to keep that talent fresh within the client organisation. It allows us to move much quicker, which I think is one of the things that we have to do now. And if you think about, historically, the client-agency relationship was riddled with inefficiency and too many busy idiots, being honest, in terms of account management on both sides. And we're starting to remove some of that, and we're really starting to see the proof points of, particularly with creative directors, and the creative agency that we work with as our partner, but also other creative agencies we work with, where they're actually seeing the value of the media agency's audience insights and how that can start to improve.
Well, you're obviously doing something right, because tell us your figures last year. You've grown strongly.
We grew by 48%.
48%, which is unheard of in any sort of major holding groups. Obviously from smaller base, but I mean, it's obviously working. So
yeah, we are seeing. We are touring clients around the Toyota hub and the News UK hub probably every 10 days now, because people are really interested to see how the model works.
David, let me bring you in. So Inda, ID Comms has been commentating on and in this space for how long now? 10, 15 years?
10 years next year.
10 years, okay. And So is this where we've got to? For clients to really trust their agencies, they have to see them. They have to be in the same building. Is this what we mean by the value of trust? Is that unless I can see you with my own eyes, I don't know what you're doing. You're probably giving money away via rebates every time I close the door. Is that?
Well, I mean, firstly, what I'd like to say is I kind of endorse Ian's optimism. I consider it a huge privilege to be working in media at such a time of unprecedented change, and I think it's fantastic for all of us to be, taking a real interest in media. Media has never been higher on the corporate agenda, and that's a tribute to the power of the industry that we work in. But there's been an enormous change in narrative, especially over the last 3 years. The first change in narrative is, I think, a significant move away from media being referred to as a cost, and all of the language that goes along with rebates and discounts and e-auctions and all of the horrible things, to media being framed as a value proposition. And that's really, really important. And the second change in narrative, which has been stimulated by the trade bodies and some very leading high-profile marketing directors, is about control. And it's not about in-housing. That's not what I mean by control. It's about marketeers reasserting their control over the important aspects of media. The contracts, the data, the important decision-making. They still need agency partners. But what most smart, progressive advertisers now are realizing is that the amount of money that they spend on media is too important to relinquish complete control and decision-making to their agencies, which is what happened probably pre-2015. Now, smart marketeers are looking at media and seeing that value proposition, seeing media as an important lever for business growth, and understand that they need to make smart, diligent decisions in order to drive that competitive advantage.
Okay, so I like the control by marketeers. They want to know what's going on. They want to know who's servicing their business and why. Okay, I get that. So what does the future look like then? How does it? So one thing which we should say is that media agencies, people on the media side, what they're great at is innovation and evolving with the times. So they began as really glorified media buying shops, and then they saw how important planning was, they saw how important programmatic was, how important content, and with every change in the ecosystem, media agencies have managed to evolve with it. And I think people often underestimate how...
Can I build on that?
Yeah, sure.
Just to build on the points about the media. The reason why I'm optimistic is that at its heart, transformation for clients, what that really means is putting the customer at the centre of your business. One way or another, that's what it means. And media, for all time, has always been about audiences. A real understanding of audiences, what they do, what motivates them, etc., etc. But it's been viewed through a very narrow lens, often commercially orientated. What clients are now saying is the reason why they're talking about gaining back control is because they understand if they lose control of the customer, they've got a real problem. So so they need a data strategy, and they need to be able to build around that data strategy. And to Anna's point, they're all following some form of customer journey, consumer journey, circles, whatever you call it. They're all following that. And they need to hold that information internally. And if you look at the tech companies, the reason why they've grown at the rate they've grown is that they've given the consumer experience that is effective very quickly. And that's what they're all trying to do. Media is in the position to have a really, I would say, dominant role in that thinking, because you can take traditional media thinking, the whole media strategy game is changing. You can take conventional media thinking, you can join it with CRM thinking, you can join it with e-com thinking, and you're getting to a place where you are in a good position to be able to help a client go, here's how you have to play the journey. That means that you have to broaden out the organisation as well. To Alice's point, I completely agree. You can't view media and content separately in that context, because what you're doing is saying, this person needs this at this moment in time. That's a media and a content challenge. So bring that together is key.
I do think you make a really important point about evolution, though. So I think one of the biggest challenges for all of us at the moment is that we're in this age of perpetual iteration. So, in both the work that we do. So the model used to be client gives you budget, you buy some inventory, you put the campaign live, you do post-campaign analysis, and then you repeat it maybe 3, 6, whatever months later. Now what we do with campaigns is we take an opportunity for investment, we set live a number of small setups, tests, we iterate along the way, we optimize, we pull some back, we put new ones live, and it continues to iterate along the way. And actually that same switch is true of the way we need to run the businesses going forward. So what you can't have anymore is a business model that you create, you set live, and then you report the budget at the end of the year, and that's it, and then it goes into the next year. What you need to do is expect and plan for maybe changing 50% of your operating model every year. You know, you should be constantly looking for opportunities to change, improve, optimize, and get more value and better outcomes from the way you're running the business. So actually the same switch that's happened in the way we deliver media needs to happen in the way we run the businesses.
So just on Ian's point, the assumption in a lot of places is that because clients have all this data and you have the big 2 and possibly 3 sweeping up 80% of new digital money and programmatic being available and can be now provided by people like Accenture, that they don't need agencies anymore. I think the reality is
You've
that
mentioned Accenture. Okay, you've dropped the A-bomb.
what we do.
Why did you do that?
Okay, so yeah.
But the point is what we do is that we take that data and we apply a human lens to it. We understand audiences. We know how to reach and communicate with those audiences. We have a whole stock of talent within agencies that works across multiple brands that can bring their perspectives and learnings and understandings to that problem. And we can create true value through that. And to your point, I think clients now understand that the actions that we take as media agencies have direct influence on their business, which they can demonstrate.
But just on that point, so, the race, the nirvana, okay, that we're all reaching, whether it's agencies, Accenture, clients, is to be the smartest stakeholder in the supply chain. It's as simple as that. As soon as you can understand and appreciate the value of your media investments in some form of business outcome, then you become the smartest stakeholder in the supply chain.
And actually, Dave is a great person to ask for, you know, what are Accenture doing? Why are they now interested in media buying? What's going on?
Well, they see an enormous opportunity in having a slice of a $500 billion media pie. I mean, Accenture Interactive generates $6.5 billion worth of revenues through their creative and transformational work. Okay, they're the largest digital network in the world. Their revenues have increased 35% year on year. And you know what? They don't buy a penny, or they don't spend a penny on buying inventory until last week, when they decided to go to market with a programmatic offering. Now that's causing all sorts of challenges and potential conflicts of interest. But the reason that they're going after that is because they see in the next 5 or 6 years a critical mass where 60, 70, 80% of all media bought will be bought programmatically through automated space. And they see an enormous opportunity in that. They've spent the last 3 or 4 years observing carefully the mistakes and the challenges that the media agencies have made by going through the programmatic space, and they have gone to market and addressed the 2 big ones. Firstly, they've made a clear statement they're not going to take a principal position, number 1, and number 2, they're not going to earn commission on it. They're going to
just explain that for anyone in the room. Just explain principal position. So this is in terms of, at the moment, agencies actually pay for the media themselves on behalf of the client.
So some agencies, and it's legitimate and it's fine, and a lot of clients enjoy it and like it and appreciate it. They buy a big tranche of inventory at a price that they can negotiate, and then they arbitrage. Then they sell it on to their clients. And that's fine. It's good quality inventory. There's no problem about that. But the challenge with that is that the client generally doesn't get visibility on the price of the media that they bought. And therefore, the margin that the agency is taking on the back of that. And what Accenture have decided to do is they've decided to make it a principle that they will not take that position, and that the only way that they will be paid for buying media through programmatic methods will be through an FTE basis, so there's no commission. So that's, again, transparent to get itself.
So, Ali, what do you think about this? Are you worried about this? Do you see a conflict of interest when you have an auditor actually going into the buying space as well?
Yeah, I think that's complicated for them, but I think their auditing business is probably not as strong as it used to be. So that's I don't think they're worried about that when there's a $500 billion market to go into, which is probably far more lucrative. A bit of caution. I think this sort of agency principal trading story is slightly oversold by some people. I mean, we probably only 7 or 8% of our investment goes through a Group M product in terms of digital space. Most of it now is actually platform neutral through people like DBM. We are moving increasingly towards an FTE model in terms of the programmatic space, or a very clear. I mean, there's a difference between disclosure and transparency, and I think that quite often gets confused. But I think agencies certainly in the last 3 to 5 years have started to very clearly try and itemise with clients or explain the models to clients in a much better way. That I think where we went wrong as an industry was 5 years ago. We never actually explained programmatic to clients in the right way.
Well, quite often principal trading wasn't separated from advisory.
Yeah.
And you can take a principal position, and that's wholly legitimate, as David says, because you're taking the risk. But you need to be clear about that. That's what's happening here, because you can't do that and be a pure advisor at the same time. That's not going to work, and that's where Accenture need to navigate it. Now, I'd go for this whole piece. There's going to be loads more. Accenture is just one competitor. Get used to it. You know, as data moves to the centre of the client business, they're going to get a whole different set of providers because, as you say, to be the smartest advisor in the room, you have to have that data and that customer understanding. I think going back to the trust theme that was raised earlier, I think what we've seen in the ecosystem of marketing is actually a damaging, because there's been so much carping between the players, you know, not held by the holding companies, by the way, hands up. There's been so much carping that actually it's undermined the whole trust in the full ecosystem. And what's damaging to that is that it's undermining marketeers when they're in the boardroom going, here's why I need you to invest this money, Madam CEO.
And this is the point, isn't it? At a time when data and knowing your audience and having a strategy and how to communicate to them has never been more important, like David mentioned at the beginning. Actually, why then are CMOs responsible for the part of the business which is under scrutiny and doesn't have the trust which the other parts have? I mean, is this not the problem you're creating for your CMO?
I think that's right, but I think the most important thing is that if we are going to be in the spotlight and making sure as agencies that we are applying as much of the transparency and showing the value that we bring in every relationship we have with the client, that same scrutiny needs to be applied to all of the other suppliers in this market. And that's where the issue with Accenture comes. And to be perfectly honest, that's where the issue with consolidation is coming as well. You know, what frustrates me is when we see something coming from one of the big platforms whereby, you know, very, very blatantly they'll go to a client and say, and present a document that's headlined the value of consolidation, the benefit of consolidation. And then they'll talk about why the client should invest all of their media through this one platform. And then they'll also say, and also we'll measure it for you and we'll tell you whether it's working. Now, imagine that. 10, 15 years ago, ITV go to a client and say, you should put all your media money through ITV, and then at the end of it, we'll tell you whether it works or not.
But clients are woken up a bit to that now. I mean, I think that's part of the issue, that there's been an erosion of some core basic industry standards, which I think people now recognise and are trying to bring it together. But because some of the platforms have had such power, they've tried to rewrite the rules of marketing to their benefit, so to speak, rather than actually sticking to the rules of marketing, which are all about how strong the brand is in somebody's head.
Yeah.
And that's where there's been a subversion of the narrative. I think that is now changing because I think they're now understanding, and as Google, I've certainly seen it, I'm saying they are part of the ecosystem, they're not the ecosystem. And therefore they have to play and contribute in a different way.
Do you think Google and Facebook are changing? Do you think they understand they can't
certainly.
mark their own homework?
I mean, we were quite involved in the story last year around, or the brand safety issues with Google last year and YouTube. particularly as my chairman kept going out and talking about it publicly whilst I was spending the weekend worrying about whether any of our clients would actually be implicated. But I think the way that Google responded to that was really positive. And I think that they actually lent in more to the agencies and clients to understand what the issues were and how we can resolve them. I think they moved very quickly. Facebook less so. Very difficult to engage with them on this sort of stuff. That's
maybe their recent appearances through government courts might wake them up to being more open to change. Do you think?
But you know what? The reason for optimism and excitement is that it is becoming more and more complex. There are new competitors coming into the market, but agencies, as you said, constantly evolve. And 15 years ago, we were all under threat from search specialists. 5 years later, we've taken it all back in-house.
That's absolutely right. People always underestimate the entrepreneurial spirit.
But those agencies that have that entrepreneurial spirit, that are strategic in the decisions that they make. I mean, I think one of the problems in the agency landscape has been that some of the decisions that have been made with respect to people, structures, organisations, have been very tactical or short-term driven or P&L driven. 12-month P&L driven, whereas actually those that are more strategic in their thinking, longer term, will be the ones that will be able to respond to this.
To answer your Facebook question, I think they will respond, honestly, because they're seeing some revenues being taken away, particularly by some of the performance advertisers at the moment, because they're seeing it's much more cluttered environment, response rates are going down, and it will be revenue that drives their change. So I think Facebook's a much younger company than Google. It frankly didn't have the resource to handle some of the issues that it was suddenly facing. And they, of course, had a degree of arrogance that is famously documented. But if you look at the Facebook platform, there's signs that its own audience is either in decline or flat, which is not an attractive proposition for a tech company. They're relying on Instagram and WhatsApp. They need to monetize WhatsApp. So they're in this world where they need to think differently if they're going to continue the growth rates that the city expects, and they're high.
Do you think they look at Amazon in the way that we do with nervousness? And
Yes, they should do.
Totally.
They should be absolutely terrified.
But they're launching I say to every client, what don't you understand about the ad revenue growth model running out of steam? You have to find a new revenue stream. That revenue stream is retail. It's that straightforward. So they're all having to develop, and Google have done it a lot, their e-com approach and their proposition. Google did it with Walmart and getting together. That's a big alliance. I think Facebook is still trying to figure out how to crack it, would be my view.
I know we're running out of time, but if we could just now look ahead a bit. So, and with my World Media Group hat on, so obviously we have some great media brands, international, global media brands within World Media Group. We have our own data, we have our own relationship with our audiences, very unique audiences, global audiences, quality audiences. Increasingly, we're seeing changes in our relationship with how we work with agencies and the network. So if at its worst, it can feel like we do all the work. We tell you who they are, how to reach them, here's the content, and you guys then turn around and say, make sure you hit that deadline. Make sure you hit that deadline. Just remind me what was the unique user rate for this? Just hitting us over the head with media metrics, and you just get the sense when you can do sort of 2-3 year partnerships with these big brands. A lot of the conversations begin when the agency is not even in the room, and then at some point, just before we start actually going live with any execution, we're introduced to agencies who then hit us over the head as if it's their job to keep us in line. And as a media owner, you feel like this can't be sustainable either. There's got to be something, a more fulfilling relationship in the way we can work together going forward. So quickly, but I know we're out of time, but I think it's important. I'm just interested to know what your thoughts are on how the relationship, I guess, with agencies and media owners will evolve going forward.
I mean, actually, I think your video right at the beginning spoke to it, which is about the importance of collaboration and connections that are mutually beneficial. I think the great value that agencies bring, and increasingly must bring going forward, is connecting together disparate stakeholders, disparate parts of the value chain, and collaborating in a way that is singularly focused on the benefit to the client. And that's the way that we need to view all of our interactions with media owners and any other suppliers who we're working with going forward, because unless we bring that value in a way to the client that is simple, it is clear and transparent, measurable, and takes the pressure and the pain away from the client, because I think it's as much a challenge their side to deal with this complexity and deal with the volume of knowledge and the hours that they have to invest in delivering marketing these days. I think so much the better. So if we go in as partners that aren't fully aligned and aren't working together purely for the benefit of the client to drive their growth, then we don't deserve to be in the room anyway.
Okay. And Ali, to you.
I think it's a cultural thing as well. I mean, I've always tried to encourage the agencies that I've been at to treat media owners in the same way you treat clients or your own people. And I sometimes get quite annoyed about the sense that people that work in media agencies don't want to collaborate, that we're just interested in coming in at the end. And I look around within the agency, and I do sometimes, it worries me that we talk a lot about trust and negativity within the industry, and I've got an agency, and I'm sure you have, full of people much younger than me that are smart, they want to do great work, they want to collaborate. I think we as the agency leadership have a responsibility to set the tone in terms of the way we want to work with partners, everybody, whether it's consultants, whether it's media owners, whether it's publishers, because that shines through in an agency. Media owners know the agencies that aren't collaborative and the ones that are, and I think you just need to create the culture within the company that enables that. And if you do, you end up doing brilliant work. Once you start doing brilliant work with media partners, more brilliant work comes, and it's as simple as that.
Yeah, and I know with your last agency, M2M, you managed to build a really great culture there, and definitely the clients and the media owners who work with you would all attest to what you've just said, so it can be done. And Ian, I don't know if you had any thoughts on...
No, I agree with both those points. I think there's something else also. I think context is back. It's coming back.
That's good news. World Media Group,
it's true.
Context is
It's
back.
coming back. There was,
thankfully.
You know what? So much damage was done because it suited the aims of certain organisations to get rid of the idea of context.
Yeah.
And with very little evidence to show that that was the right thing to do, quite frankly. So context is absolutely back because of the troubles with brand exposure in inappropriate areas and so on and so forth. So I think there can be a positivity put against that, and that's how I would definitely look to engage. The second thing is that content, I mean, there's just way too much content, and therefore quality of content to keep audiences engaged and keep them flowing through the platforms is absolutely crucial. And you're as well as being a financial organisation, you're a content organisation, and you can create the quality. And there's so much now negativity around clickbait and what the problems that has generated for advertisers, and they're waking up to it. Yeah. So I would say I would gamble on context being back.
Context being back, and do you think media agencies will play more in the content space or less in the content space? More.
They are. We absolutely have to play more. I mean, our agency is built on media, content and technology, and those three things are of equal importance, and we want the revenue in the future to be equally spread across those three things. It's absolutely vital.
But we still need publishers and media owners to work with us to get that right. That's
great. Look, unfortunately, we have run out of time. I know we've gone over, but that was, I'm sure you agree, a really great panel with some really interesting insights. So thanks a lot for your time and for coming.